Good morning friends, this is Yagya and I am presenting the economy survey for Empower IAS, and I am presenting this economy survey on the behalf of the Empower IAS. So we should start with basic details, how economy survey is prepared, what are the requirements for the government to prepare economy survey, and what are the questions that are asked by the UPSC in order to develop certain skills for economic survey government of India. So we will look into the details of economic survey. Economic survey यानी आर्थिक सर्वेक्षण पूरे भारत सरकार का एक साल का लेखा जोखा है, and it prepares for the development of entire ecosystem in terms of economy, whatever which has been done for entire one fiscal year. So in this we are discussing about the economy survey of 2021-2022, and it is prepared by Ministry of Finance, by Department of Economic Affairs, Government of India. So it was prepared by Chief Economic Advisor, which is important for government and for UPSC aspirants, that is KV Subramaniam. So यह KV Subramaniam के द्वारा prepare किया गया document है, which is going economy advisor of Government of India. Now the new economic advisor will be V.A. Nageshwaran. So going into the further details of economic survey, we look into what government seeks to have in entire 1 year and what it proposes to build for the new budget to be income. So Government of India prepares the economy survey for Ministry of Finance, which are the total details of 1 year production of data and what activities which have been done by the government in a fiscal year in terms of core sectors, manufacturing, industrial development, shipping and power sector. So as it is an economic report card, it provided statistical details of all the data that are under the aspects of economic activities. So बहुत प्रकार की इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटीज़ होती हैं, such as primary, secondary and tertiary, and their data has been published under the economic survey for 1 year. It is prepared by Chief Economic Advisor for Finance Ministry. Now the budget session that will come into forecast will take consideration of all these data, जो भी इनमें डेटा शामिल किए गए हैं, graphs, statistics and all the documents of economy that are taken consideration under budget session. So budget session में उन्हें शामिल किया जाता है, जो भी कमियां रह गई हैं, जो भी चीज़ों को forecast करना है, जो भी चीज़ें दिखाई जानी हैं, that all are considered from the economic survey. That is why it is very important for mains point of view, interview and prelims of the UPSC and other state services examination. So economy survey के बारे में और हम देखते हैं. So it discuss about the outlook and challenges of the economy, which are under recommendation by the various economists, various sectors such as Finance Commission report, Niti Aayog report, various development by state government, Finance Commission and so on. And it is in exception, so election year, when there is certain election, यानी कि जब कभी भी चुनाव होने वाला रहता है और चुनाव आयोग उसके बारे में लेखा जोखा करते रहता है, तो इकोनॉमी सर्वे भी प्रिपेयर होता है दैट लुक्स इनटू दी प्लान्स एंड पॉलिसीज ऑफ गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एंड व्हाट आर टेकन इनटू कंसिडरेशन दैट आर टेकन इनटू दी बजट सेशन. रेस्ट्रिक्शंस के बारे में बात करते हैं दोस्तों. द रेस्ट्रिक्शंस आर बाइंडिंग ऑन दी restrictions are not binding on the government, but the economy survey prepares all the details of the activities that are done by the government of India in order to create new vision for the development and progress of the economy in a certain year. So जैसा कि हमने देखा दोस्तों, अभी 2 साल कोविड लॉकडाउन के पीरियड चल रहे थे जिसमें इकोनॉमिक रिसेशन चल रहा था, बट वी सॉ a V-shape recovery as well as a K-shape recovery. So Indian economy was going down in the year 2020 and it saw an upliftment growth in 2021 that is called as a V-shaped recovery. V-shaped recovery. So जैसा कि हम इस पिक्चर में देख रहे हैं, the budget estimate declines for certain period of investment in 2020 due to COVID lockdown. So कोरोना में जैसे लॉकडाउन चल रहा था, that caused the decline of various sectors such as services, manufacturing and other hospitalities, tourism, as well as various sectors which are pushing the growth for the economy as well as development for the economy, which were in decline due to COVID lockdown. Still we see that as the economy opens, the market opens, and there was a growth which was shown in the Indian economy in 2021, and still we expect further growth in 2022. 2022 में हम और भी ग्रोथ देख रहे हैं, which is 9.2%. 9.2% का ग्रोथ हम फॉरकास्ट कर रहे हैं, as it is predicted by IMF, World Bank, AIIB and other various institutions. That is why the economic survey is very very important for you people. आप इसे ध्यान से पढ़ेंगे, एक एक चीज़ों को नोट डाउन करेंगे and make the notes for your prelims as well as mains examination and interview also. Now let us look into the further details. जैसा कि निर्मला सीतारमण जी कह रही हैं, there was a plan for developing the policies. So there was a barbell strategy that was adopted in the latter fiscal year. पहले फिजिकल ईयर में एक बारबेल स्ट्रेटजी अपनाई गई थी, जिसे हम थोड़ा डिटेल में देखते हैं. सो व्हाट इज दिस बारबेल स्ट्रेटजी? व्हेन देयर इज अ ग्रोथ इन इकोनॉमी, सो देयर इज कंजर्वेटिव सिस्टम ऑफ इकोनॉमी. जैसा कि आप देख रहे हैं, जब इकोनॉमी प्रोग्रेस करते रहती है एंड व्हेन देयर इज ए डिक्लाइन इन द इकोनॉमिक सिस्टम, देन गवर्नमेंट नीड्स टू मेक सर्टेन पॉलिसी in order to balance the total economic system in a fiscal year. यानी कि when there is certain risk, जैसे COVID period was started, there was a risk for the declining of economy. COVID lockdown लग गया, there was declining economy, but government tried to manage the risk, that is risk management, by putting the lockdown and creating a vaccination in order to protect the population for better health and security of life. Government started vaccination, health and life belongings. Then it also provided direct benefit transfer into the accounts of the people who are sitting into the house and facing various challenges due to this lockdown. And then it tried to manage the problems of MSMEs and other industries. जो छोटे और स्मॉल इंडस्ट्रीज थे फ्रेंड्स, उनके टैक्स की डेडलाइन को रिड्यूस कर दी, इलेबोरेट कर दिया गया बाय elaborating the deadline or extending the deadline. Government tried to make it a balanced approach. That is why जैसा कि आप जिम में देखते हैं, when you pull out certain barbell, तो एक साइड में अगर थोड़ी सी वजन ज़्यादा रहती है तो वो झुकते जाता है, but you try to manage it in a balanced position. So in the same manner, the barbell strategy was adopted by Government of India so that 90% of capital was safe and remaining 10% was kept into risk. And it was a binary approach. So barbell approach is called as a binary approach due to management of risk as well as development of economy. So it is called as binary approach. And it is neither a very conservative nor very aggressive, but it is a balanced approach. So that is why it is a barbell strategy, and barbell strategy was prepared in the lockdown by making vaccination, recovery by DBT, loans to MSME, and postponing the deadlines, very very important for your prelims as well as mains point of view. आप इसे याद रखेंगे. Now coming to the next slide, we see how the development is catered by the government under various programs. So, the BARBELL strategies combining of safety nets cushioned the impact of vulnerable sectors. BARBELL strategy क्या करती है? It is a cushion approach in order to protect the vulnerable sections of society as well as industries. So, what are vulnerable sections of society, friends? Vulnerable sections such as SC/ST population, then there are minorities which are very poor, then there are tribals which are facing challenges due to COVID, and there are old age people, and there are women which were facing challenges due to COVID lockdown and lagging their jobs, lagging their expectations and lagging their life chances. So that was called as a Bayesian updation model. What is Bayesian updation model? Calculation of risk probability. Bayesian model में हम क्या करते हैं फ्रेंड्स, जो भी रिस्क रहती है इकोनॉमी की उसकी प्रोबेबिलिटी कैलकुलेट की जाती है थ्रू द स्टैटिक्स एंड डेटा दैट आर अवेलेबल टू द गवर्नमेंट. Then there is a forecasting of the schemes and policies which are to the benefit of the vulnerable sections as well as the industries which are lagging in the economy. So by calculation of probability of risk through statistics और डेटा के हेल्प से हम probability कैलकुलेट करते हैं, then फंड प्रोवाइड करना in order to mitigate the challenges of the vulnerable sections as well as small and medium industries, that are micro, small and medium enterprises which were facing the challenges. So BARBELL strategy indicates a good principle of risk management. Thus BARBELL strategy emerges out to be a good strategy for risk management. Now coming to the next, what is waterfall approach? So this economy survey discussed about 3 principles and 3 strategies. First we discussed about the BARBELL strategy. Second is waterfall approach, and the third will be agile approach or agile framework. So government of India adopted a waterfall approach in order to mitigate the challenges by keeping care of the requirements by the people which are facing challenges in the villages, cities, vulnerable sections and small industry, by looking into the requirements of the vulnerables as well as small industries or MSMEs in terms of their problems, उन्हें forecast करना by designing implementation of policies such as मनरेगा, महात्मा गांधी National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, then verification of the beneficiaries in order to provide the direct benefit transfer into their account, and maintenance of the sick industries and vulnerables. Now it is done by taking a detailed planning and finally meticulous implementation of that plan. Waterfall approach is a technique that is developed by the government of India in order to provide care for the COVID victims in terms of industries and these vulnerable sections. By meticulous and detailed planning and implementation, the response for the traditional sectors was in terms of regulation as well as development of such sector by forecasting models despite more than adequate evidences. And the Friedrich Hayek says that the pretense of knowledge, that means when there is a risk over certain economy, over a certain nation, then there is a pretense of knowledge, how far the knowledge is helped to the vulnerable sections in order to make the plans, policies, implementation and taking the feedback. Now the second method we will look into is the agile framework. So what is the difference between agile and waterfall network, friends? So waterfall network has certain good sections, but still it lags in the loophole. So there comes the agile framework. Agile framework has the component of value, that is the major component. So agile framework works on the feedback system, that means initiation of a policy, then planning, implementation, and there is recovery or maintenance by looking into the feedback. Now this is the way how agile framework works for the development of certain economic system. When there is lag in certain policy framework, such as जैसे ही कोविड स्टार्ट हुआ फ्रेंड्स, देयर वेर सर्टेन पॉलिसीज इम्प्लीमेंटेड बाय गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया, वैक्सीनेशन शुरू की गई और भी सारी पॉलिसीज लाई गई, डीबीटी, मनरेगा एज वेल एज वेरियस अदर पॉलिसीज टू टेक केयर ऑफ द पीपल हु आर गोइंग बैक फ्रॉम सिटीज़ टू विलेजेस. माइग्रेंट पॉपुलेशन जो थे वे सिटीज़ से घर जा रहे थे, तो उनकी समस्याओं को देखने के लिए देयर वाज एजाइल अप्रोच, सो दैट द ओवरऑल सिस्टम शुड बी लुक्ड इनटू a very careful way and there should be no threat to the population and no one should lagging behind. So it is based on a feedback loop. Remember friends, ये feedback loop पे काम करता है. It also works on real time monitoring of the actual policies and it also prepared planning matters in the framework, but mostly in scenario of analysis, identification of vulnerable sections, as well as understanding policy option rather than the date prediction in the flow of events. यानी कि इस सिस्टम में हमने पहले इनिशिएशन किया, then there was planning by identification of vulnerable sections. Which sections of the population are vulnerable and which are lagging behind under the threat of COVID-19 and who are going back to their home without any money, without any food grains and having various kind of problems due to COVID pandemic. So taking care of all these things, this was a total process that was an agile approach or loophole based approach for the development of economy. Loophole and feedback based approach. So in this way the three approaches for the mitigation of challenges which we see in the COVID year. कोविड के दौरान हमने ये तीन सिस्टम देखे जो भारत सरकार ने पॉपुलेशन की केयर के लिए लागू किया. फर्स्ट वाज द वाटरफॉल स्ट्रेटजी which we discussed. Then second was barbell strategy, how to mitigate the risk and manage the system. And the third is agile framework, which makes the loop of the overall system by taking the feedback from the various sections of the society and which are having benefits and which are lagging. Now coming to the next, we will see in more details So yes, this is the diagram which I was telling that Agile framework looks into the requirements of the sections under targeted, that is targeted beneficiaries or target vulnerable population were taken into account. Then there was plan for the sections by making planning with the government officials as well as the considered department in various sections. Then there was a design methodology for the development of planning. So designing of the policies which are required for the development of the policies which need to cater the demands of the population which are suffering under COVID pandemic. Then there is development of the policy in order to cater that demand, and the release of fund. Then the fund are released, and there is track and monitor of the funds and tracking and monitor of the policies under consideration, such as Manrega. Okay, now and this is the difference which you need to understand, friends. आपको इसके बीच का अंतर जानने की आवश्यकता है, which is very very important for your mains point of view. So agile approach is a continuous cycle, whereas waterfall approach is a ladder based discontinuous or linear process. It is linear in nature. It is small high functioning, यानी कि agile strategy is small high functioning and collaborative teams, and it is upfront planning and in-depth documentation. Waterfall strategy is upfront planning, that is downward movement of the plans and policies will be there, and there is flexible continuous evolution. The evolution in the agile development is फ्लेक्सिबल एंड फीडबैक बेस्ड, यानी कि ये किसी भी समय अगर सरकार को आवश्यकता पड़ती है तो इसे मोड़ा जा सकता है. दैट मीन्स इट इज फ्लेक्सिबल एंड फीडबैक बेस्ड है, एंड देयर इज कस्टमर इन्वॉल्वमेंट ऑल्सो. फीडबैक टेकन फ्रॉम द कस्टमर्स एज वेल एज द पॉपुलेशन विच इज यूजिंग द बेनिफिट्स ऑफ द प्रोसेस, यानी कि बेनिफिशियरीज का भी इन्वॉल्वमेंट रहेगा. बट इन वाटरफॉल अप्रोच फ्रेंड्स वी सी द बेनिफिशियरीज फीडबैक इज नॉट प्रेजेंट, नो फीडबैक. सो कैसे गवर्नमेंट को पता चलेगा कि कहाँ तक पॉलिसी इम्प्लीमेंटेशन हुई है, नहीं हुई है, बेनिफिट्स किस लेवल तक पहुँची है या नहीं पहुँची है. दैट इज लैगिंग इन द वाटरफॉल अप्रोच. एंड देयर इज कॉन्ट्रैक्ट नेगोशिएशंस. There are negotiations in the process of waterfall approach, but there is no negotiation in agile framework, and it is simple and unchanging project. So it is unchanging, there is no flexibility. That means it has rigidity. So waterfall framework has a drawback that it is rigid in nature, and it is unchanging, and the close project manager involvement is there. Then there is involvement of the authorities which are looking into the project which is under waterfall framework. But in the agile loop there is always close monitoring of the projects which are under the consideration by the district development officers, BDO, CO, Gram Panchayat, by continuously taking the feedback from each and every point sources. So इसे हम याद रखेंगे, very very important for your mains point of view, GS paper 3 economics as well as economics optional. Now coming to the next, we see the data that was under the consideration in terms of GDP, output prices. So GDP in first wave 2020 quarter first says that it was 34 near to 33 lakhs crore. यहाँ पे 33 lakhs crore होगा. Then in quarter 2 it was little bit declining. Then in quarter 3 the GVA was seems to be more declining. and GDP was rising. GDP was rising in quarter 3 2020 ends, and 2021 again first lockdown, it was declining. Both GDP and GVA declined simultaneously to 27 lakh crores. Then again, as quarter 3 reached, it was again rising. GVA seems to be rising, and again GDP also seems to be rising. यानी कि लॉकडाउन इंड होते के साथ ही हम देख रहे हैं कि कैसे GDP was rising very sharply and making a V-shape recovery. That is a V-shape recovery in economy. So there is V-shape recovery, and as there is 2021 and 2022 lockdown, second wave of COVID, we see again a decline in GDP, but it was not that much fall, but it was nearly again 33 to 32, यानी कि 33 to 32 lakh crores के अराउंड ये डिक्लाइन हुआ, एंड स्टिल इट मेंटेन्स इट लेवल ऑफ growth. Again we see in the next phase that GDP again rising. In the last December we see this data. Now the statistical position of this data becomes very important for your prelims as well as mains point of view. When you see that GVA pre-pandemic level, this blue one is GDP and this shaded one is GVA. So GVA is again around 133 lakh crores something. Okay, 133 to 134 in the middle of, that is GVA, and GDP rises to 145 lakhs crore, above 145 lakhs crore. So this was the annual year 2021-2022, which was taken for the consideration of economic survey. Now what makes the point to be noticed that daily new cases were increasing, as we see in the graph in first wave, then the second wave 4 times rising on the daily cases, and the second wave again makes the new cases. Still our economy in terms of GDP was rising despite certain grudges, decline. Still it continuously rises to certain extent, which are more justified than the other rich economy of Europe, or even comparison to China, USA, Iran, or Japan, Australia, Canada, or other economies. That is why we are calling India as a highly developing and growing economy with having more than 9.2% of growth potential. So India is having higher growth potential. So there is again a sectoral data which is in the 3.6% and which was 4.3% respectively in previous 2 years. We will look into the other picture. Now again the graph shows how the data is rising despite the COVID pandemic. We are rising in 21.2. So let us look into the details of the data again. Economy surveys analyzing the data in order to mitigate the challenges which are arising out of COVID pandemic. So merchandise trade balance was again in little decline. जैसा कि हम यहाँ पे देख रहे हैं, merchandise trade balance April 9 to December 2021 is under negative. So merchandise trade is declining continuously in terms of handloom, fabric and other such clothing industries that comes under the merchandise trade, which seems constant decline, and it was constantly negative. ये लगातार negative पाया गया है. Then exports, which were under decline in April 2020, again shows a comeback and they are returning in December 2021. Again a comeback, a welcome move. from the import sector, which is clearly rising, which is a good sign from the economy survey. Now, India's international trade, which constitute for the balance of payment, which again seems to be rising over here, which we see in January 2019, it was feeble to 7 billion US dollar. So rising again to $9 billion US dollar, and which was in month of between May and June. Then in December 2021 it was again declining. Now, India's current account balance. What is the current account balance of India? It comprises of current account deficit, and so current account balance, which we see in quarter first, it was minus 16 US dollar, and with a slow rise it rises in quarter 4, and again there was a decline in first quarter 2019-20, then again rise. So in the pandemic level, when there was lockdown, the current account balance of India was rising. This is a very good move which we observe in the trends of economy survey, and again there was a decline, then again it rises in the first quarter of 2021-2022, yani ki January February month, May, it was again rising from 0 to 1, then again declines, and so on. So remember this data and facts to justify your answers in the mains as well as prelims point of view, because UPSC is nowadays become very dynamic and they are asking statistical data in the prelims as well as mains also. So remember these facts, friends. That is why economy survey becomes very, very important.